Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I made a super team out of every single country that had around maybe 2 to 3 players at the VCT Tier 1 level, and it resulted in 20 different countries with 20 different super teams, and I'm going to rank those super teams on a tier list that I made here. So this is going to be a good one. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like this type of content. Let's get started with Team Canada. This one is a really good team. Personally, I put Finesse in as IGL, even though he's not really retired. He's really taken a break from the game, so I think it's fine. He is going to be the best Sentinel player in Canada. He is one of the best IGLs in the world. Then we got Marv, EU, Jonah P, and Koala Noob as well at the duelist role. This is a really good team. I think this is a high A tier team just to start things off. Jonah P is probably more of the weaker link on the squad, and he still is an amazing flex player, the Ascension flex player for the guard, now G2. This would be a really good super team. All in all, they would be probably competing for the top spot, but I think I'm going to start them off with high A. Maybe I'll move them up to S tier if I don't know, if I feel like it, like if we see the other rosters and this looks like a more competing roster. But I'm going to start them with high A. Let's go to the second country, which is Russia. And this team, man, this is a super team. We got Something as the duelist IGLing. We've got Chronicle on Flex, the Fanatics superstar, insanely flexible. We've got, I was meant to change this to just Trex. I put Cloud/Trex. Cloud could work in this as well, but we've got Trex as the initiator player. We've got Shao on the controller. He's now made the switch on Na'Vi. He played a little bit of initiator. He's now playing full controller. And we've got Nats on the Sentinel. And we've got former Gambit coach Ang, who is now, who is he coaching? I think he's coaching, he's coaching Carmine Corps now. That's why I was very excited about them. This team, this roster, it's got 2 of the former Gambit players, 3 if you include the coach, 3 out of 6. This is going to be a really good team. I'm going to put them in S tier. I think maybe they're the best team on paper. Maybe. I mean, you just look at the fragging power. Something's incredible. Also, he's IGLing. Chronicle, Trek, Shao, Nats. You've just got insane heavy hitters of firepower and insane role players, really, too. Nats and Shao and Trex and they're just not used to being the star players, but they will frag hard and they are just tremendous riflers. Let's go on to the third team, USA. This is a good one as well. Demon 1 is the duelist. Leaf as flex. The flex role is hard for me to decide. I got Crashies as initiator. Bang as the controller. You could go Som here as well. I was debating that. And Boostio as the IGL Sentinel. And Shet, the coach of NRG, as the head coach of Team USA. Now this team, I think this is going to be an S tier. I think I'll put it behind the Russian team just because the firepower, man, on that Russian team is just insane. We've got a little more up and comers. Bang, he's been inconsistent. Leaf has been unable to get to a lot of international lands, so I think they'll be just an S tier team. But they still have Demon 1, who is the best player in the world. They've got Boostio, who's one of the best IGLs in the world. And they have Crashies, who's just one of the best decision-making initiators, and he's insane with his utility. I think S tier is fair for them. Let's move on to the United Kingdom. This is a good one as well. We got Keiko as the duelist. He was the duelist for Apex. Now he's the duelist for Team Liquid. We got Brody, who's playing as the flex role. He's playing on Ascend, I believe, this year. He was on Ascend last year for Ascension. We've got Mystic as the initiator. I just swapped Mystic over to initiator because it was getting harder to find good initiator players at the tier, well, not even at the tier 1 level, at the tier 2 level. So put Mystic, even though he's playing controller this year, he has played initiators in the past. He'll play the initiator. Boaster as the IGL on the controller. And then Lime. Oh, where was Lime? I think Lime's on the new Ascend now. I can't remember, but Lime is a Sentinel player. He's playing into tier 2 this year. And Mini, who was the head coach of Fnatic, now the assistant coach, he'll be the coach. This team is a little weaker, I must admit. They lack a little firepower. They have more kind of role players on this team. Keiko's pretty good, but and Lime is a pretty heavy hitter in tier 2, but he hasn't really played at tier 1. I'm going to put them at B. We'll see where they go from there. I think B is pretty fair for them. Let's move on to Turkey. Turkey is just basically Foot Esports roster. We got CNED, Mr. Fallen, Cracks. Brave, though, is the only exception. Yedije is the new Sentinel player for Foot. Brave is the BBL controller player, if I believe correctly. Sorry, I made this list a couple days ago, and there's so many players on it, I forget exactly where I pulled people from. And then Gaze, I believe he's the head coach for Foot. I can't remember with this Turkish squad, but they've still got a good team on paper. I'm gonna put them in A. I mean, Foot in general. I'll put them behind Canada. Foot in general, they're gonna be a good team. Brave is probably an upgrade on the controller role. He frags a little harder. But other than that, I mean, they are just a pretty solid team on paper. The fact that they're, 4 out of 5 players from the same team really shows that Turkey, where there is depth, there is new players coming up. We just haven't really seen that depth be showcased in the right way. In Turkey, they all frag really hard. They all have insane aim. It's more about the toning down the aggression, good decision making, and I'd say good utility usage with some of these Turkish squads, like setting up good map control instead of just taking fights. Let's move on to Sweden. Sweden is also going to be a very interesting team. I had to put Meadow from former former G2 player Meadow on the controller role because I couldn't find any Swedish controllers at the tier 1 or tier 2 level that I thought were worth putting on this list. Zipan, we've got the duelist. Shadow, who has been announced on the Koi roster now, he'll be playing the flex. He's a kind of initiator player, but I just put him on flex. Leo, of course, for Fnatic, had to be on this list. There's no way he wouldn't be. And then I originally had Safe at the duelist role, but I've moved him down to the Sentinel. And Eric, who is formerly known as Dune Bros, is the coach of the squad. This should be a very good team on paper. I don't know, like though it does have Meadow's not playing tier 1 anymore. Shadow's a tier 2 player up and coming, but Zipan, Leo, and Safe are just all heavy hitters. Oh my goodness. I don't know if I can willingly put them ahead of Canada. I think they're going to be ahead of Turkey in my opinion, but I don't know. They're a high A tier team for sure, but I don't know. I'll start them there. That's where I'll put them. Now let's go to France. France is pretty one-dimensional as well. We got Taka S as the duelist, Natank on flex, Enzo as the IGL, Shin as the controller, and Logan as the sentinel with Zeish as the coach. This team is an amalgamation of 3 different rosters, I believe, with Enzo coming from Team Liquid. We've got Natank and Logan, and I believe Taka S as well. Yeah, Taka S coming from Gentlemates, and we got Shin coming from Carmine Corp. This roster is a little weaker on paper, especially since we haven't seen a lot of these Gentlemates players play at the tier 1 level. Enzo, though, I'm a big believer in Enzo as an IGL and as an initiator player. The guy's just so clutch, and he's a very good rifler as well. I think France will go. I think they'll go. I don't know. This this might ruffle some feathers. They'll be in the B tier. I think I'll put them behind Great Britain just because of Boaster being the IGL for this Great Britain squad. If they were to match up head to head, I think I would edge them slightly just because of how good of an IGL Boaster is, despite some of the really good firepower on this French squad. But anyways, let's move on to Brazil. Very good team. A lot of loud players or former loud players. We've got Aspes as the duelist, Kaunzine flex, Sasi initiator, Pancata controller, and Les is going to be IGLing the squad from the Sentinel role because he's picked up a little bit of that mid-rounding with Loud. And we've got Bazooka, former Loud head coach, as the head coach. This Brazil squad, yeah, I mean, it's just heavy hitters and former Loud players. This Loud team was a super team. I'm going to put them high A above the Canadian squad. Even though the Canadian squad does have a lot of that former Optic core and Marv and Finesse and a lot of those good tier 2 players in Qualanoob, I just think this Brazil, I mean, they're all tier 1 players playing in tier 1 right now. You can't say the same for Canada, which, I mean, Qualanoob should be a tier 1 player in my opinion, but he's a little more unproven. I'll go with the tried and true. Brazil being a high A tier team. I don't know. I'm considering putting them in S tier. I'll slap them in low S. This is close here. America does have more depth than Brazil, but the super team of Brazil might be able to beat the Americas team more, I would say. So we'll put a pin in that and come back to it. Chile is also a pretty interesting team. We got Kesnet as the duelist, Mazzino as the flex. Of course, Mazzino is playing the controller now, but he used to play the flex, so I put him on that. We got Shai as the initiator player. We got Melzer as the controller, and King as the Sentinel IGL, and Zonik, who I believe I had to really dig to find a Chile coach. It was really hard to find. This team would be really good if they all put this whole team together. It would be a really good Chile squad. I don't know. Against some of these teams, I don't think they would have the edge. I think they'd be ahead of Great Britain and France, but maybe below Turkey, Sweden, Canada. I don't know. This is a good team. I'll put them slightly ahead. Shai I rate very highly. Mazzino I rate very highly. This is it is a Chile, super team at the end of the day. But the coaching I would say would be a disadvantage. I'd put them a little lower. I'll put them low A. I'll start them there. Maybe I'll do a little rearranging. Let's move on to Argentina. This team is a little weaker. A lot of tier 2 players. You may recognize them from some of the Ascension teams. I believe Rubcoid was from 9Z. We've got Noswer though. Noswer from Leviathan from last year, but now he's on the bench. Sadhak is the IGL flex player. De Guerra, who I believe is also 9Z, and Mizu, who I believe is also 9Z. Some of these guys may have come from Fusion. No, I believe they're all 9Z players. We've got Adam as the coach. This team is inherently a little weaker. The only saving grace is Sadak's IGLing ability. Noswer is a good fragger. A lot of these guys are good players, but they're just very streaky, very one-dimensional, I'd say. So I'd have to dock points for that. I put Argentina as our first C tier team. I might have to move some of these down. It's very top heavy right now. We'll see. Some of these teams do get weaker, though, I will say, as we get down into the gems of EMEA, because it's just such a divided region, pulling from different areas, different leagues, from their Polaris League, from their DOC League. Or actually, I don't think I pull from their DOC, because that's German, so I don't have a German team in this one. Maybe I should have made one. You could have argued that, but I didn't, just because I don't think they have like one tier 1 player, I believe. And so let's move on to Korea. This is a very good squad as well. The Korean super team. I had a lot of troubles with this squad because first off, Duelist Buzz, that was a no-brainer really. Psy player is good. He is very good. And RBS Flex were kind of like 2 locks for me. The Initiator player though was harder because Zeta is on the bench for T1 right now. Granted, he is a phenomenal player and he can IGL. And I don't know why he's on the bench on T1. He's a very good player. I don't understand it. Mako controller, that was pretty easy plug. But then King on Sentinel. King on Sentinel is the best move on paper. It's just whether or not you take out of game measures into play because he's known to have been maybe a bit of a more toxic teammate or just a rougher personality to deal with. But whether you like him or not, he frags and he can IGL. And I've actually really enjoyed some of his calls, but yeah, people just don't like being teammates with him as much. So you can take that into account if you want with this team. Autumn as the head coach. He's the coach of T1. This Korean squad would be very good on paper. I think I'd have to rate them above. Oh, I'll put them middle A right now. Sweden with Leo and Zipan, I think would beat this roster. I don't know. The Korean super team is very good. I won't lie. RB is a little weaker of a fragger. And that's really it. Zeta is phenomenal with utility, and he is also a very good fragger as well. And I love Buzz's duelist. I've always loved his duelist, his jet, and his raise is really looking good now. So I'm really happy for that. Maybe dock points for King, just being, I don't know, personality issue. If you take his fragging ability and how he plays in game, I think this is a fair spot for them. You could, I don't know, you could argue Canada's a little too high here, which I might end up switching them down a little lower, putting maybe Sweden and Korea ahead of them. I'll do that for right now. Let's move on to Indonesia. We were getting into some of these good Pacific teams. We got Monyet as the duelist, Forsaken on the flex, Blaze King on the initiator, Mindfreak as the controller, and Xcurate as the sentinel. Six Fingers as the coach. It was harder to find an Indonesian coach. I believe he's an assistant coach in Tier 2. That's where I'm pulling from. But I mean, this team on paper, man, the firepower, Monyet, Forsaken, all nuts. Blaze King was phenomenal in Tier 2 last year, and a lot of people are really hyping him up as he's joined Global Esports for the upcoming year. Mind Freak is insane. He's a little inconsistent, and Xcurate is new, but also looked very good in the off-season tournament that T1 played, and they made the playoffs at, I believe. This Indonesian squad, now I gotta check the flag, make sure I get the right flag. Okay, here we go. This Indonesian squad, I think I'd have to put them ahead of Canada. I do rate Canada highly just because of the finesse IGL and Marved, like that combination. I just think that team, and EU is also insane. I just think that team is really good. This Indonesian squad, though, I would put them ahead of Korea, I think. I think I would. Oh, I don't think I marked IGLs for this last little bit. Forsaken could pick up that IGL role, as well as Xcure probably from CS. I think he IGL'd. Either way, I didn't mark IGLs for these last couple, but I think Indonesia, a good spot would. I think I'm rating Sweden too high. Sweden has a little bit of a weak spot. I'll put Indonesia there for right now. You can't underestimate the firepower on this team. And if you know, it would be very Paper X because the 3 out of 5 Paper X players. So take with that what you will. Now we go to Japan, a little weaker. Even though Depp, Sugar Zero, and Laz are very good players, we've got Takej, I believe Takej. I don't know how you say it exactly. I might be mispronouncing that. And then we've got Anthem on the initiator role. He's the best player on DFM by far. And yeah, this team, you would have to dock points, especially for just some of the inconsistencies on this roster, even though Laz and Depp, I believe, are just you can get a team. Like Zeta Division has proven in the past that they can get to international events with just these two guys popping off. And Sugar Zero, he has some unique plays going back to Iceland a couple years ago, but this Japan squad would be weaker, I'd say. I'd say they're a B tier team. I hate to put them down there with such great fraggers like Laz and Depp, but I think I'll put them there just to start. If we move on to Thailand, this is also a very interesting team. We've got a lot of former Talon players, former Xerxia players. We've got Surf on the Duelist. Garnets, I believe, is also a Duelist player. I just put him on Flex because he is a very good player, and I really liked his decision making on the Duelist, but I think he would translate well to the Flex. It's not, if you're a very active player, it's not the most difficult transition to make. We've seen Asuna make it. We've seen Tens make it. Cruz as the IGL initiator player. Scary coming back to his Thailand team because he now plays on the Singapore squad of Bleed. But he played with Xerxia on the Thailand squad before. And Sushi Boys, who I love. I can't believe he's not in Tier 1 this year. He is a phenomenal Sentinel player. This Thailand team, I do rank pretty highly, actually. Not as high as some teams. I just think higher than a lot of people would expect. If we were to put them here, I think that would be. I don't think that would be fair. I think high B. High B. This Chile squad though is still an A, and they're still Chile. All these teams are super teams. All these teams are very good. I'll put Thailand there to start. I like them there. I'll do some reshuffling at the end. We'll see how this goes. China, this is again a lot of EDG on this team. That's kind of the theme for some of these other teams is you'll see a lot of repetition based on where because a lot of Tier 1 teams from a certain region only have a certain amount of good players. There's like the player pool is smaller than in the USA, for example, or in Russia. Russia has a pretty big player pool, I'd say. We've got Concon on the Duelist, Viva on the Flex. I think Viva was from JDG. I made this list a little while ago. Forgive me. Nobody, very good. Howdon, IGLing, and Chichu. Yeah, so 4 out of 5 EG players. XPZ as the coach. I can't remember where I pulled them from. Because I don't think he's the coach of EDG. I think that's someone else, maybe from Taiwan or something like that. But anyways, this is a very good Chinese squad too. But they are the EDG team. So I mean, this is how I'm kind of basing it. Is Foot is basically the Turkish team. EDG is the Chinese team. They would beat the Turkish team in my opinion. They would beat EDG. Foot play right now. I think EDG would win. I think they just looked a little poor in some of these off-season tournaments just because they were being run down to the wire. But Foot would be close with them. But I'm going to put China there to start off. They're pretty good, but they're not S tier quality. Who I got in S tier again? Brazil, USA, Russia. Yeah, I think I'm fine with that right now. We'll see. We'll go back to that. Finland is very interesting as well. We pulled from a bunch of different aspects here. I brought Bone Cold out of retirement because we needed a controller. We needed an IGL. I've got Dirk as the duelist, Hoodie on flex, Yampy initiator. These three right here make the team really. Bone Cold's good as well. And then Feeken, I don't know if I pronounced that right. He's a tier 2 player. Phobia, I think a tier 2 coach as well. This team is a little weaker. Durka is the saving grace. Hoodie is pretty good. Yampy's pretty good. Bone Cold IGL is decent, but I think if I were to match them up, I think I'd put them actually here. I think I would, because Durka is just insane. All these three players right at the top, insane mechanics. I don't think you can argue with that. Some of these other teams are a little more questionable, like the Gentlemates core. They've got good mechanics too, but they're coming all from tier 2. We've got 3 established tier 1 players, and Bone Cold, who was a tier 1 IGL before he retired. Also, champions winning IGL, if you take that into some consideration. So let's move on to Poland. I think this is a little bit of a weaker squad. I had to put Kamo as the Sentinel player, even though he is a duelist player right now. Kajak is the new duelist for Apex. He looks really insane. Starzo IGLing because I believe he's IGLing Koi now. They made the roster announcement. Molzy playing for Apex in tier 2. Another pretty good player. And then Grubino, I believe, is also on Koi now. I'm not as familiar with this roster or familiar with these players. I know Kajak is very good, but in my eyes, this is a weaker team for sure. I think I'd put them. I'll have to come back to this Argentina team. I don't know if I'm ranking them too low. I also have no one in the D tier. Well, they're all super teams, so I don't know. No one can be in the D tier. I might have to just move some teams down just to make it like that. But I think if I were to rank them against other squads, this team would be one of the weaker teams for sure. They've also role swapped for Camo just because I couldn't find another Sentinel Polish player. So let's move on from that. Let's go to Lithuania, which I didn't think they had enough players at the tier 1 level. Now they do with Mini Boo coming up. And Sender and Destrian were both Lithuanian. I wasn't aware of that. And Boo is also Lithuanian as well. And Hype is a tier 2 player, tier 2 Sentinel player. I think he's playing for, maybe he's not playing for Apex. He might be playing for Apex, but he's a pretty well established tier 2 player as well. So this is a Lithuanian squad. I mean, they are interesting. They've got more of the brains. 2 people who could IGL. 3 people technically. Boo could IGL. I think Destrian IGL'd last year, or Boo's IGLing this year for Team Heretics. Destrian IGL'd last year, I believe, for Vitality. Sender has picked up the role this year, and Mini Boo is cracked. Like that, let's keep it real. Mini Boo is cracked, but I would rate the squad a little lower on the totem pole. I think I'd put them. Would I put them ahead of this Polish squad? I don't. I think I would, just more experience at the top level. I put this Lithuanian team top of C. We've only got 2 more teams left, guys, so stay with me. We've got the Philippines, which is basically Team Secret plus 2GE, who is from RRQ. He's a pretty good player. This Team Secret team in general relies on a lot of hero plays, but they've got some good strats too. I believe Warbirds, is the coach. So they do have a good team. Erax is the coach coming in for the Philippines. I would rank this team, even though technically if we were to mash together teams, obviously the teams that were already together, already playing together, would have a distinct advantage. But if you gave all these teams time to practice and create proper strats, this Philippines team would be down here for me. I think considering, I'll put it ahead of Argentina, because am I rating Argentina too low? I just think they didn't have, I guess they had 3 tier 2 players and a player on the bench right now. even though Nosworth technically doesn't deserve to be on the bench. And their best probably fragging player would be Sahak, but he's the IGL as well, so that's a little dicey. Mizu was a little inconsistent at that tier 2 level. So I think, yeah, I would put this Philippines team ahead of this Argentina team. All tier 1 players. You can make the argument. A little bit of a, top heavy, bottom heavy in Pacific, but, they're still tier 1 players at the end of the day. If we move on to Singapore, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit, bear with me. If we move on to Singapore, we've got, this is actually a very good team. I would be excited about this team on paper. We've got Jing on the duelist, Darion on the flex, Lenny on the initiator, Ben Kai on the controller, and he'll be playing the IGL as well. I know Ben Kai's played more initiator in the past, but I just had to factor him in there somehow. And then we've got Egoist on the sentinel role, Egoist coming up with the bleed team as well. Darion, Egoist are both bleed players who frag hard. They frag really hard. And Lenny's a pretty good initiator player, and Jing is just Jing. Jing is so impactful with the space he creates. I would put this team I'd put him middle of the pack. I don't know if we put him in between here. That might be too low for this team. The squad is pretty good. I think I have overestimated the Chile team. I think the Chile team is good though. Like, I mean, it is a good fragging team if we look at it like that. No D tier teams. They're all super teams in my eyes, so that does kind of make sense. I think I'll do a little more restructuring here. If we go back to the Canadian team, Kuala Noob, I do rate this team pretty highly, but I think it's fair to, let me look at the Sweden team. Those are kind of the outliers here. This is a good team. This would be a really good fragging team on paper. Like, Leo is probably one of the best players in the world. Ziphan is really good when he's on the duelist. Safe is also, like, so impactful. I also meant to put him as the IGL here. But he's just so impactful with whatever he does. Even though Meadows tier 2 player now, he was a tier 1 player, and Shadow was a tier 2 player. He's now a tier 1 player. I think, I don't know, Sweden, I don't know, put him, maybe swap Korea ahead of him. I've also got Indonesia pretty high, but I mean, that is Forsaken and Friends, as I call it, so that they're going to be pretty good as well. Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty happy with this. Oh, let me take a look at the Chile squad real quick. Take a look. Kesnet, Mazzino, Shy, Melzer, King. Like, this is a really good team on paper. This is a good fragging team. Shy is a very aggressive player. This would fit in the style very well, in my opinion. But I think maybe I'll drop him to high B. I've also got Thailand pretty high. Let me take a look at. Yeah, this is, I mean, Scary's unbelievable. Scary Sushi Boys, back end, are really good. I think the only aspect you could have about this team is inconsistent duelist performance out of Surf, and Cruz as the IGL. He doesn't have the greatest track record, so you could lower that down a bit. But Thailand here, high B. Let's take a look at Finland again. Where the heck is Finland? Where is Finland? Here we go. Durka, Hoodie, Yampi. I think that's fair to put the Thailand team ahead of them. Great Britain, also, that's Boaster's team. They are a little weaker, that Great Britain team. I won't lie. We've got a couple role swaps, a couple tier 2 players. I'll put them. I'll move France ahead. I think I'll also move Japan ahead. I have Japan low. I don't know if this Japan team would actually be that low in real life. Because, I mean, this is kind of Zeta Division with an upgrade on the initiator player. I haven't seen their new academy players that have come up to this team. They should be good. Like, at the end of the day, I think Japan here is a bit of an understatement. But, like, this team could have actual punching power. Laz is very, like, the star power on this team is insane. But they do have some holes and a couple gaps, even though they're all, I believe, tier 1 players technically. So, yeah, this Japanese team probably fine there. Lithuania. I'm liking how this looks. I think this will be my tier list lock it in. Obviously, this is just based off of the super teams, not the depth of the region. If the depth of the region was the case, USA would probably be number 1. I'd say there's a lot of good players out of Korea as well. Korea Brazil would be up there, but the depth outside the Lao players has been questionable, I will say. Some of these players at the tier 1 level, especially since they're bouncing around all the time and recycling different rosters and stuff like that, stuff that's been tried but hasn't worked. So I like the way this shaped out. I don't know, Canada being that low. Canada's a pretty good team. I may be just biased, but Finesse, Marv, EU, Jonah P, Qualanoob. We got 4 out of 5 tier 1 players, and Qualanoob could easily be a tier 1 player. So I would be tend to upgrade over Sweden, but Sweden also has Leo, and Leo's insane. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think this is my tier list. I didn't put anyone in D, sorry. If there did have to be a D tier or a D tier team, I'd probably put Argentina there. Not because the players are bad, obviously, just because compared to the field, it's just, I mean, they are probably the weakest team. A lot of these super teams are very exciting, and I would love to see them happen. And if there was a World Cup for Valorant, I would love that. But I don't see it like any of these teams coming, besides like maybe a Loud coming together. Even maybe USA, but the Russian one surely won't happen. And that on paper is probably the best team. Let's be real. Politics aside, they're probably the best team on paper. So let me know in the comments what you would change as well. And like and subscribe if you like this type of content. I'm going to be coming out with some new interesting content when the VCT tours start up, particularly for VCT Americas, if that's what you guys like. So yeah, be sure to check that out and like and subscribe if you like this type of video. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.